What is up, guys? It is the Sound Alchemist, and today I'm back to talk about Warhammer 40K once again. However, today I am talking about my fan legion, the Lost Legion, the 11th Legion, the Celestial Sons. So, if you don't know, the Celestial Sons are my very own fan chapter that I've been crafting and working alongside for a long time now, since I want to say a little bit after 7th edition started, and I had a good chunk done, but then 7th edition switched over to 8th edition and a major change happened. This change was a slew of rule changes, gameplay mechanics switched over, and that really hindered me because now I had to switch over from 7th edition rules to 8th edition rules. Some things kind of clashed with my army and whatnot, but the biggest thing was the introduction of the Primaris Marines. Love it or hate it, Primaris are the new wave for Space Marines when it comes to Warhammer 40K and the future. So with that being said, most of my army consists of 30k Marines, aka Marines that I've gotten from Forge World. And that's going to consist of the mainstay of my army, because lore-wise, the 11th Legion was only around during 30k times. So, with the introduction of Primaris, I was wondering if I was going to include them into the army, and if so, how can I do this? So a few months back, I started brainstorming. And I created a character that represents me, myself, the Sound Alchemist, into my army in the form of a Primaris, and that is Alkem, the Granter of Immortality. And the model I chose to represent him is none other than the brand spanking new chapter master of the Raven Guard, Shrike. So as you can see, Shrike's model looks really cool. It looks really badass with the talons and the jetpacks, and the armor that almost looks like modified Phobos Primaris armor looks really cool. However, this model looks a little bit like I did back in my emo high school days. Insert cringy picture here. So as you can see, it looks like me from back in the day, so that's what I'm going to use to represent me in my own fan chapter army. So, without further ado, let's get into the lore for Alkem. The darkest day for the Celestial Sons is known as the Fractured Sun Incident. On this day, the Emperor enacted his Edict of Obliteration, which ordered his forces to eliminate those of the Celestial Sons. The captains, psychers, and apothecaries were marked as high-priority targets, and during the purging of this 11th Legion, Alkem ended up pledging his loyalty to the Imperium and to the Emperor, forever branding himself as a traitor to the remaining forces of the 11th. To further prove his loyalty to the Imperium, Alkem assassinated the entire barracks of wounded Celestial Sons that he had just been healing. These 27 Marines were the lives that he would always remember. After the Edict of Obliteration ended, he was forced into the ranks of the Ultramarines, and for 10,000 years, he scoured the battlefield, saving as many fallen battle brothers as he could. Legend states that he never lost a single vial of gene seed after he recovered it, even if it meant going into near suicidal situations. As a reward for his heroics, Alkem was chosen to be upgraded with the Primaris gene, and in dire situations, he would have his own forces to command, his own unit of Primaris to aid him during VIP search and rescue missions. When Alkem first heard of the possibility of the 11th Legion still having survived the Edict of Obliteration, he slowly began recruiting other Ultramarines who had originally been Celestial Sons from before the heresy. He also began to upgrade them to Primaris Marines, and slowly but surely, his rebellion began. When the time was right, his Primaris followers, now calling themselves the Immortal Sons, began their betrayal of the Imperium. The only hint of the rebellion was the destruction of the Ultramarines' gene factory, and Alkem's commanding officers riddled with 27 bolt pistol rounds. These 27 rounds were revenge for the 27 Celestial Sun lives he took so many years ago. And that was the lore for Alkem, the Primaris Apothecary. So two things here. First, I want to know your opinion on the lore. Does it make sense? Does it fit kind of with what's been going on with the Warhammer 40K universe? Because obviously he was a Marine from back in the Horus Heresy. He's lived and survived all this time as an apothecary for the Ultramarines, which, as we all know, after the Edict of Obliteration, the ranks of the Ultramarines mysteriously jumped up by a vast amount, meaning that not every Space Marine who was from the Lost Legions was killed off. Many of them sided with the Emperor, betraying their Primarchs and their original legions, and thus were indoctrinated into the Ultramarines. So you can kind of see that through the years, Alkem still remembered his origins, he still remembered who he stood for, who he fought alongside, and he remembered the act of having to kill his own wounded battle brothers. 27 men who he was patching up to basically put out into the battlefield again, he was forced to kill to prove his loyalty to the Emperor. And finally, 10,000 years later, he got his revenge, putting all these Bolter rounds into his commanding officers, who he was pretty much forced to listen to for all these years, with no means of fighting back, or else knowing that it was 100% a suicide mission. However, he slowly began building his men up from the original Celestial Sons, and he was slowly brandishing them with the new Primaris upgrade. Not all of them survived. Unfortunately, that's the case with going through the Primaris process, but those that did were a huge benefit towards going back to his original legion and helping them try to accomplish their goals. So after this, he basically burned down the gene factory that he was working in, killed his commanding officers. They took his ship and escaped into the void of space. In here, obviously things happened and whatnot, but one way or another, they managed to reunite back with the core of the Celestial Sons, and now I'm able to use these new Primaris models. Now, of course, the mainstay of my army is going to have to be 30k Marines, which I've said prior. So I'm thinking maybe a unit or two of Hellblasters, and the guys you see here, I forget what they're called, but they're like jump infantry, and they got plasma pistols, because that's the whole thing about my army. The Celestial Sons are meant to be adept at plasma weaponry, and with the whole Primaris upgrade, they're further able to use plasma weaponry better, because if they do take that wound, or I think they still die, because I was going to say they have 2 wounds now, so if they do take a wound from overheating, they'll just have 1 wound, but I think it outright kills them. I'd have to reread that part again, because it's been a while since I played with Space Marines. Lately I've been playing with Tau and Chaos, but I need to play Space Marines once again. So yeah, that was my lore, that was my little bit of, I guess, fan lore to kind of make my army be able to make use of these awesome new miniatures for the Space Marines, and just a little jab at myself for looking like Shrike. I might do a little bit of kit bashing and whatnot, since obviously Shrike is meant to be a Raven Guard chapter master, but I might have to put in like an apothecary badge or something along the lines to make him look more of an apothecary than just an outright fighter. And I am going to be making some homebrew rules and testing them out to see how well an apothecary HQ Alchem would be on the battlefield. But again, because he's not meant to fight, he's meant more as like a medic. So maybe he can like work similar to how a warp smith for chaos works, where they can like heal D3 wounds from machines, but maybe he heals wounds on multiple wounded characters. I don't know. We'll see. Because if I could outright bring back Space Marines like that have fallen to battle, that's way too OP. They're not Necrons. So I'll play around with the rules. If you guys have any ideas as to how he would make sense on the battlefield, what rules I should use, maybe play him as like a Fabius Bile, but for regular Space Marines, let me know in the comments down below. And that's all I got for today. Thanks for listening, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.